Thank you for listening to Steel Roses, a podcast for women by women. My name is Jenny.
And I'm Melissa. And we're here to bring you honest content in a space where we can still be real about the everyday challenges for women.
So, back in action, a little delayed.
Little delayed. We took a day.
We took a day. And I think it's actually worth it to note for everybody who's listening, because Melissa and I have non-negotiables essentially, and those are basically things that we will not, kind of slack on, or we're not going to push to the side. And when we have special holidays or things with family, those are essentially non-negotiables, which would mean we're probably going to be delayed posting our podcast and recording our podcast by a splash. But we're still here. We're always here.
We're here. We're back. How was speaking of our week? How was your week? How was Father's Day?
Week was good. Week was really good. I'm trying to think of anything noteworthy. Oh, yes. Big news. Summer vacation is here. Last day of school was on Friday for the kids. So it was, that's the big commotion in the house. And every day we keep reminding them, like, oh, you don't have school today. You can relax, you can hang out, because they're still very much in the mode of, what are we going to do today? And we're like, no. Although they do start summer camp tomorrow. So, yay.
So wait, are they at the stage yet? Like, do you remember that last week and being in school and being like just dying for summer break, and then like everyone just being so excited? Now they're a little young, so are they in that mode where like they're like, oh yeah, school's done? Or do they actually miss having somewhere to go, something to do every day?
They definitely miss having somewhere to go and something to do. So because we're very strict here with our routines. So
I see.
Yeah,
so school's like
summer,
a break.
Yeah. So we have to that just means that we have to dig in deeper with our routines. But that's also part of the reason why they are in a summer program, because last summer they weren't. And we noticed, they get they need that. They need some kind of routine, some normalization of what they're supposed to be doing. I think it helps them out, and it helps us out, obviously, our sanity. So they know it, and they're excited to have summer vacation. But it was cute because the twins graduated kindergarten, and the last day they were it was cute. It was like a graduation, and they were crying because they're going to miss their friends and their teachers and stuff. And I was like, they're literally going to be in your class next year. It's okay. It's all right.
That's so cute.
What about you? And then Father's Day weekend. So we had a really, really nice Father's Day weekend. My stepkids and my grandkids came. And yes, that's right, everyone. I am a grandmother. You did hear that right. My stepkids, my grandkids came, and we had a fun pool party, barbecue, just hanging out day. It was very nice.
That's awesome. I love those days.
How was your week? How was your weekend?
It was good. I did something for myself this week, although now I have to follow through. So a friend of mine and I decided to sign up for spinning classes.
Oh, I'm so excited. Really?
So it was one of those deals where it was you have I don't know, 15 classes to use in 2 months, and it's X amount of, so it's a package deal. But we were both on the fence, well, if you do it, I'll do it. And I'm I don't want to do it. But I was yes, this will make me commit, and it will force to carve out time because you have to pay up front.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So what I think is hilarious though is, and Matt was encouraging me. He's yeah, I'll watch Mia. You go ahead. What I thought was funny is that I've never taken a spin class, and I'm not really a gym rat. When I lost a bunch of weight, I did it by, I would do exercise videos at home or whatever. And, so I'm not a gym type person. So, it'll be interesting to see if I die from my first one. So
it's fun. Notice how excited I got because I actually do like going to the gym. That's not something that I've always had. That's something I got from my husband, the love of going and working out. Although I haven't been able to go because I keep prioritizing these virtual classes that I've been taking over.
Oh yeah. We should have an episode on that where you could tell people about that.
I was thinking about that because I do like to, I do like having you like promote like the posts on our IG account where we're giving a shout out to Kathy Heller. I'm taking this really cool virtual series with her, and it's like life changing. It's literally life changing, and I literally can't say enough good things about it. So, you'll probably hear me mention and talk about these virtual courses I'm taking. If you ever decide to Google her or look her up, if she comes into your path, take that as a sign that you need to get involved. I'm just saying, it's life changing.
That is on my summer to-do list, by the way.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I signed up for spin classes, so that'll be interesting. I'll report back. I'm not the most coordinated person, so that will be it'll be funny. And then we have Father's Day, yeah, just together. There's my husband, my mom, Mia, and I. So it's just nice to take time, and like we said, our recording got pushed back a little bit, but I think it's important. Like we said, it's a non-negotiable for us that like family comes first, no matter what. So
yeah.
But for this episode, now going into our actual episode, content, my social media was blowing up, and it's so funny because like I think, do you remember that show Grey's Anatomy? I don't think you and I were like watched this craze of a show, but I think it's on like its 20th season, and it's got like the biggest following. My mom watches it. I'm pretty sure like our whole family, a lot of people watch it, but you and I don't watch it.
Stop. I have to tell you, I actually did start watching it. So when it first came out, when it had its like first year, I did watch it, but I'm not really a episode person. Like I think I'm too much of I want to watch it all at once. I get annoyed like when I have to wait, and then I lose interest. So I'm not like that, but I did start watching it on Netflix, and I had to stop before a certain season where they were going to kill off one of the main characters, because I was like, I need to pretend like that doesn't happen. So I literally cut myself off. I was like, I can't watch that because I will be bawling. Like that is one show that there were so many episodes where I would be on my phone watching it, folding laundry, crying.
Oh my
because
gosh!
Because killed someone. It's intense.
So you're a closeter Grey's Anatomy watcher. Yeah, I didn't know this about you. Oh my!
Yeah, I am.
That's
I
so
love that
funny. So I'm gonna have to give it because now it's on Netflix. So maybe I'll give it. I have to give it a shot. I think I watched like one episode with my mom one time when we were together. But I guess I don't know. I don't know what the social media storm set it off. I think the main Grey. I think she's leaving the show.
Yeah.
And then Katherine Heigl and Ellen Pompeo, they did that Variety magazine has that Actors on Actors interview. Mm-hmm. So they did it together. And one of the things that came up was that Katherine Heigl is known in Hollywood as being quote unquote a difficult actor to work with, and she was talking about how she got blacklisted from Hollywood for a while because I guess I don't know. And there's if you actually, because I actually had to Google it, there's like a bunch of different reports on why she actually left the show, but one of the main things was I guess Katherine Heigl did Letterman back in the day, right before she left Grey's, and I guess that's like 2010, they said. But she spoke up about the harsh working conditions that the actors were being put through at the time, and like 17-hour days or whatever it was, and literally none of her colleagues backed her up. But now, I guess because Ellen Pompeo has left Grey's, she's now doing interviews saying like Katherine Heigl is absolutely right, like it was crazy, and people are now coming forward and saying, yeah, no, she was telling the truth, and she was completely right. But so I thought it was really interesting because literally I think Ellen Pompeo said, she's like, listen, nobody likes a confident woman. They'd rather you be a woman looking for your confidence than actually be a confident woman because it makes them nervous. Sweet, they can handle. Strong, they can't.
Yeah.
And it was just really interesting to me because I was like, you know what? And she framed it like women are either victim or villain. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but I do think along the lines that either women are the people pleaser or women are the bitch. And I think it kind of gets slated in those two images or those two narratives, you know?
Um, the situation with Katherine Heigl, again, closet fan, since you apparently you didn't know. I actually remember when that happened. Again, like historical over here. I remember when that happened. I remember when she left the show, and I remember her being blacklisted. The reason why I remember it is because I remember I believed what was out there. And honestly, until you sent me that article last week, so we're talking about over 10 years that like I've
Right?
had this in my head that she was a pain in the ass to work with, that her and her mother were a pain in the ass to work with. That's how they set her up. And like, so she spoke out. She spoke her truth. She said, look, this is a bad situation. It's pretty, it's pretty horrible. They basically portrayed her. They put out all this BS about her and people bought it, including myself, because you stop seeing her after a while. Like she
Yeah.
was really, she was eating up some good roles. She was getting some really great roles.
Yeah, she was the
And
Hollywood. I remember her being the Hollywood it girl for like a
she
minute. And then
she
all
was
of a
in a
sudden she was
bunch of
gone.
movies and then all of a sudden she wasn't and you didn't hear from her. And then I remember I saw her in a NyQuil commercial and I was like, is that Katherine Heigl? Like, why is she in a NyQuil commercial? She's amazing. Like, I don't understand. And then I remember Googling it at the time and being like, what happened to her? And the articles that popped up were like, oh, she can't work because she's so difficult. So she has to take what she can get and this and that. And like was trash talking her. And then I come to see this interview and it's like blows my mind because even me, someone who I consider myself fairly, you know, awake and woke, that like, oh shit, I ate this up. Like,
Yeah.
so, and it's unfortunate because the reason it happened was just because she spoke her mind. And that's pretty awful. That like the rhetoric there is that, oh, if you open your mouth and you speak your mind, we're going to blackball you. Like, and I know that's like real big in the Hollywood industry at this point. Like, we're all kind of aware of that. Um, but yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy the way that all kind of rolled out.
And I think it's really interesting that her female colleagues are coming out now, once they've left the show after they're done, because they're probably afraid, like, hey, look, she
Yeah.
spoke up and tried to stand up for us, and look what happened to her. So I'm just going to keep my mouth shut, keep the paycheck coming, keep doing what I like to do. And then afterwards, it's a shame that women feel like they can't stand up or say the truth at the time because of what they're afraid they'll do to their careers.
What the repercussions are going to be. And
Yeah.
that's across
Oh,
from,
industries, right?
that's not just like, oh, high powered professionals. That will go from your cashier at your local grocery store all the way up
Mm-hmm.
to presidents of companies, CEOs of companies, because you don't want to be labeled as a
Difficult,
problem.
right?
And I'm sad to say this almost, but I actually had this discussion with someone recently that was complaining about something at their place of work. And they came to me and they're like, look, like these conditions, this, and they're giving me the story about like what they were complaining about at their job. And I literally said to them, okay, well, do you think realistically, like, is it worth it to say anything or should you just move on?
Mhm.
And that's kind of shitty because like that's a real life situation that I literally was giving advice to one of my younger friends and saying like opening your mouth sometimes isn't even worth it. I actually almost have never given feedback like that, like upon exiting, a company. When you leave a company, you
Oh,
get
yeah.
the
Mhm.
opportunity to do an exit interview. And they always ask you like, oh, how can we improve? What can we do here? Um, to be perfectly honest with you, the women that I know that have actually given real feedback when they left were basically like kind of like tagged as, well, they're just bitter because they're leaving. And so it's like they
Mhm.
basically kind of shot themselves in the foot by giving this feedback. So I've never done it because in my head, I'm like, why? Like, what's the point? You didn't take my feedback when I was an employee. So you're definitely not going
Yeah,
to take
like,
my feedback as an
now that
exiting
I've
the company.
left.
Like, there's no point. Nobody wants to be labeled as a problem. And that's pretty shitty that you can't And I mean, it's not just a woman thing. I'm sure men go through the same shit where, like, they kind of have to toe the line, keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, no, 100%. This probably happens across the board, but I thought it was really interesting the way that like you can't be both like the confident woman and the people pleaser. Like you're either going to be the
No.
confident woman and the bitch, or you're going to be sweet and the people pleaser.
However, think of it like this also. Like, why does the confident woman have to be a bitch?
Right. Why does
Like,
society
why?
why?
And no, but even like ourselves, because not for nothing, the portrayal I had, like the image, and you know this, you're gonna, and actually anyone who knows me really well will think this is a funny reference because of how obsessed I was with this movie. Um, but even like for example, I'll use the Devil Wears Prada, right? That's always been like an all-time
Oh,
favorite movie for
you
the
and my mom
clothes and
love that movie.
oh my God. Oh, the fashion in that movie. I just love it. Um, but like that was one of my favorite movies. And for those of you who haven't watched it, oh my God, shame on you. You need to watch it. But um it's basically the portrayal of Anna
Oh, Meryl Streep.
Wintour, right? Like Meryl Streep is portraying loosely like Anna Wintour. She's one of the editor in chief. I forget what magazine it's for, but she was supposedly this ball bust or whatever. So Meryl Streep portrays her as this, like she's this hard faced, stone faced, die-hard professional. You die for your job, like bitch on wheels, tearing
Yeah.
people down as she
Sacrifice your
goes.
family, like
Sacrifice your family life, sacrifice everybody, sacrifice your marriage for your job. In my early 20s, this was the visual I had as to how you're supposed to be a successful female professional
and get it done. Hmm.
and get it done. And so I definitely tried to embody that a bit. And I remember an intern that eventually became an employee at the company I was at literally told me, she was like, "Yeah, I was actually kind of scared of you when I started working here." And I was like, "Get out of here." And she was like, "Yeah, I know." She was like, "Now that I know you," she was like, "You're like really like," she's like, "You're like nice and funny and everything." She was like, "But yeah, like your image like is." And at the time, I actually took it as a compliment, and I was like, "Oh, nice." But now I'm like, "Oh no, like no, that's not the way to go, people." But you're right. Like on that note, it's sad, but it's like you can only be these two things, and that seems to be like across the portrayal of even like genders across because man and woman, like men, you kind of have to just be like the tough guy, right? Like
Right.
the embodiment of what a man is and the visual in the media is you're like either the tough construction, like guy or the tough camping guy, or you're like the sleek, hard face, like professional. Like men have the same problem in media, but like
Yeah. Yeah. It's
sorry.
like those funny memes. Have you seen them since Yellowstone? Again, we're not turning this into a television episode, but like yeah, like this idea like to be a man, you have to be rugged and rough and willing to kill and protect your family and but it's just funny how it comes up because um like you're saying across both genders. But I think for women, that ruggedness, that toughness, that killer instinct is portrayed as maybe good for business, but as a deficit for them
Right. For
in
everything else.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can't have both. You
No.
you can't and well, hold on a second. We're told you can't have both. And see how easily that just came out of my mouth. We're told
Yeah.
you can't have both. We're told that you cannot be a professional and also be a mother and a wife. We're told that. And we're told that so much that I literally just had it fly out of my mouth and I didn't even think anything of it. But that's not the case. You can be a professional and a mom at the same time. Is it difficult? Absolutely. 100%.
Will you
I
be
have,
tired?
of
Yes.
course. Are you going to cry on a regular basis? Probably. Like,
Absolutely.
welcome to the party. Like, it is, like we've talked about that. Like, let it out. Which, by the way, okay, wait, hold on a second. I'm going to plug like my virtual classes for a second. Digress for 1 minute. I haven't Googled it yet, so I'm going to like everybody gets homework. But in my program with Kathy Heller, she actually talks about crying and how actually therapeutic it is. And we all know that, right? Like you hear like, oh, let it out,
Feel
like have a
better.
good
It's like a
cry.
release.
But they actually tested the tears of people that cried for specific reasons, sadness, this or whatever. And apparently there's actually toxins released when you cry from your body.
Interesting.
Yeah, I haven't Googled it yet, but she mentioned it. And I obviously trust what I'm hearing in these virtual classes because she's like so on point. But yeah, when you have a good cry, it actually is cathartic and therapeutic for a reason. You're actually releasing toxins for your body. So just plug, everybody, Google that. I thought it was interesting.
Let's take a quick break.
Are you interested in podcasting but not sure where to start? My name is Jenny Benitez, and I'm here to help guide you through your podcast launch and maintenance. Check out the link in the episode description for Podcasting Unboxed, your comprehensive startup guide. I am very excited to work with you.
That's really interesting, which makes sense because they say like when we sweat, like
you're releasing toxins.
So like, yeah, it makes sense. But
circling back, sorry, that was just I thought that was really interesting.
No,
but yeah, like it is hard, and like kind of like honing in on like the whole like the situation with Katherine Heigl. Like she got blackballed. She's a prime example of somebody who like spoke up her mind, and the industry didn't like it, and they said, guess what, you're not going to have any work anymore, and they took it away from her. That goes along with the whole Me Too movement. There was for how many years women were being assaulted and treated like, crap and just all these horrible things were happening to all these actresses and these big name actresses that were like, I want to have a career, so I don't want to speak up. Oh my God, let's permeate the culture of assault of women even more. Like I can't even wrap my head around how horrible those situations must have been for these women that all they wanted to do was act and do their job and work. And to do that, they had to do these terrible things and be put in these positions.
And at the highest level.
Yeah. That's the part that's like really crazy. We're not talking about, these young girls, they didn't know. Like, yeah, some of that was that. But we're also talking about like major actresses and women in the media that like we know, like Salma Hayek, like like all these women were put in this position. It's horrible, and they didn't say anything because they were scared that they weren't ever going to be able to do anything.
And
any
that's
more work.
The thing is like it's not like it stayed in a bubble. It seemed like that it was just kind of known in the industry, and everyone just sort of it was hush hush, and it's just like, for it to be accepted at that sort of level, it blows your mind.
Yeah, it's wild. It really is. But there's a reason for it. And so like when we started talking about this topic, I was doing research, like light research on like, well, what's the history of this? Like, why is this happening this way? Like, why are we portrayed in this light? And if you actually go back to, I actually talk about this a lot with my husband because I have a lot of feelings about like feminism, original feminism, and then feminism, how it's transformed now. Which I might have some of those opinions that are not real popular, like the unpopular opinions. But in any case, the original suffrage movement in the 60s, it started because there was just basic human rights that women wanted to have, and we weren't allowed to for a variety of reasons, mostly because the people in power at the time, which were men, predominantly white, middle-aged men, these guys are in power at the time. And the rhetoric and what they're putting out there is that women are not smart enough. They're too frail. They can't handle it. They can't handle, and it's wild to me that they would say women are too weak to do certain things or we're too weak-minded. We're the ones who are birthing the life into society. And yet we were historically shown as, we're too frail to handle things and too weak to do things. In particular, if you look into it, there was this one, there's a lot out there. Like, we didn't get the right to vote until the 60s. Like there's a lot of things that are like basic that people don't realize. it took time for us to get. And when you think about like the original suffrage movement, the people that were in power at the time that were making women, oppressing women, they're still alive today. And those are also still the people in power. So somebody who was born in the 60s is going to be the person today who's in the VP level. If you think about the age gap there, right? Like if they're born in the 60s, they're probably in their 50s, 60s now or something to that effect. My math is really bad, guys. Sorry. But there's people that are actually running the show now. So these are people who were alive when the common belief was that women are not smart enough and not strong enough to be able to handle being a professional, or they're not strong enough to be able to handle like these certain things. And so it kind of makes sense as to why that depiction is still out there and still continues, because they're still here. They're still alive. What was starting to blow my mind was when I started thinking about that, I was like, oh my God, my husband was born in 1975. And hold on a second, women weren't allowed to. I was like, and it's funny because he's very traditional. And it was funny because like I was looking up all these facts and I was like, well, when were women allowed to have bank accounts? We didn't get the right.
That blew my mind.
Women did not have the right to have their own bank account until 1974. We were granted the right to have an individual account without having, because prior to that, if you wanted to have a bank account, your husband or your father had to go to the bank with you and sign that it was okay for you to have a bank account. That was like 1974. My husband was born in 1975. There are people that are alive today, including our parents, that were alive during a time when women couldn't even have their own bank account. Like, guys, that's insane.
Mind-blowing.
It's insane. It's mind-blowing. Like, how is that possible that was a thing? But it's like real. And then like I actually went down this rabbit hole of how old we both are, and I was like, oh my God, I was also alive before a time the internet was like mainstream. Like that just like scares me. But like
craziness. And when you think about it, it makes you stop and say, wow, damn, like we've really come a far way. Because, you know, sometimes the message out there is that like that we haven't made so much progress. And it's like when you think about things like that, that's real. Like we've made a lot of progress. The women that, when you're talking about the suffrage movement, they've made a lot of this possible. And now granted, we still have a long ways to go. There's still a ton of inequality in pay, working conditions. When you go to, like, you're talking CEO level, VP level.
Oh, there's
academia, law, like at the highest levels, there's still significant inequality for both women and minorities. And if you're
oh my God, if you're a female minority, God,
forget it.
Oh.
So there is still tons of this journey left, and then progress that needs to be made. But still, when you take facts like that into consideration, it's like, damn, like we can have a bank account. Our you know, it's mind blowing.
It honestly, it literally is. It's crazy to think of it like that. But you know, on that note, like, because you mentioned a few things there, when I was going through the research of like history of like, oh well, you know, where are we at with like the pay gap and all that stuff, from the time that like the women's movement started to now, there's only been, the number is so small. It's like 8% or 7%. There's only been a very small increase in our favor. It's just terrible because like, as you mentioned, like, okay, well, if you just look at men and women, it's incredibly uneven, the pay scale. And then if you are a minority male and then a minority female, pay scale still uneven, but even a lot more so for a minority female. Again, like my husband and I we're literally just talking about this because I was giving career advice to a young professional and I was explaining like how you have to negotiate raises and negotiate promotions because people don't just hand those out. You're not going to ever get a promotion just based on merit. It just doesn't happen. You have to actually bang on those doors. And I was explaining, my son-in-law and I were talking about this, and I said to him, I was like, you know, we were talking about like career progression. And I said to him, I was like, he was like, well, how often do you do that? And I was just telling him like my work history. And I said to him, I was like, you know, as a female professional, it is slightly different for me. Like I have to be really aggressive because if I'm not, no one's going to, I thought for a long time, oh, my work will show that I deserve promotion. They'll see how hard I'm working. That is not, that's not the case. They don't even think about it. They don't think about it. So it's one of those things that like, yeah, you do have to kind of bang on those doors. But,
and honestly, your biggest jumps have not been from internal promotions. You've had to leave, you know, promote yourself and actively seek those opportunities out at external companies a lot of the times.
Well, actually, I was actually telling this to one of my current colleagues. I've been in my field for 17 years, and I have only ever been promoted one time at a company.
How crazy is that?
Yeah. And every single time I got to, and you can actually, if you look me up on LinkedIn, you can see my career progression. I always got to about the 3.5-year mark, the 3-year mark or 3.5-year mark. And that's when I would start saying, okay, I have done my due diligence for this particular role. I'm ready. Here's I think at one of my, I tell this story a lot. At one of my jobs, I actually put together a PowerPoint presentation, was like, let me show you in real time how much money I'm pulling in and how much work I'm doing. And let me show you what my clients have said about me. And I put together this whole presentation about how top tier I was. And the feedback that I had gotten at the time was, well, you didn't answer this email within a 24-hour period. So
I remember.
And I was like,
I remember when you were
do you
going
remember that? I was like, are you
literally
effing kidding me right now? Like this. I was like, well, I guess that's it. Like, you know, but every time that happened, I always took that to like, be like, okay, this is not I'm not worth it. This is you're not smart enough to recognize that I'm worth it. So kind of move on from there. But I know we kind of digressed a little bit, but like kind of like bring us back around. So for the other historical tie-in that I wanted to mention with the whole like portrayal of women in media and how it's, you know, you're either this like power hungry, you know, bitch on wheels, or you're this demure, dainty, you know, I'm glad that now we're getting all these other representations out there. Like you don't have to be like that. And because there's the same kind of misrepresentation with like working mothers. You're either the stay-at-home glossy mom, and I don't know how that even goes together. Because when I was doing like, you know, mom stuff,
those two
you're
things
not
don't go
glossy.
together.
Like a stay-at-home glossy mom. I think we're thinking trophy wife kind of situation. Like, yeah, like stay-at-home moms aren't glossy. Like they're busting their asses. Like they are working 24 hours a day,
which is a whole nother
right.
conversation.
Like, there's no benefits. It's what you're right. Like there's no benefits to this. Like I don't understand. But that, you know, there's always these large disparities. Like there's never like an in between just regular person represented, because that's boring, right? Like nobody wants to see that.
It's not funny.
The other exactly the other part. So there's like the whole, you know, there's the range that were represented in the media. The other part that I wanted to tie in here, historically, that I thought was important to note was, the Boston Marathon. So like outside of like professional and the whole images there was this wide belief that women were too frail to do certain things. And it was just widespread across society. Like women were weak, women were frail, women can't handle it, they're not smart enough, this, that, and the next thing. This permeated our culture so much so that women were prevented from registering to run marathons. And in particular, a pretty famous image is of a woman trying to run the Boston Marathon, and she's being tackled. And I've seen the image before, and I didn't really know what it was, and I looked it up. And apparently this woman decided she wanted to run, so she registered under her initials. And that was the way she was able to kind of sneak into the race. And so she kind of stayed to the side until the race started, and then like she jumped in and started running. One of the officials was so offended and so like appalled that a woman was running that he actually tried to tackle her.
Oh my God.
While she was running. So you look up Catherine Switzer, She was the
I'll
first
have to
woman
do
to run
this.
the Boston Marathon in 1967. Only because she registered under a male sounding name. They actually tried to
Wow.
take her out while she was running, and she pressed on and she actually was able to finish. And
Oh
then
my
after
God, they
that,
actually are trying to
they're
drag her
trying to
down.
drag her off. Yeah, isn't that crazy? Because they just didn't want her to do it.
That's insane.
And again, this is 1967. We're not talking about like, oh, this was in the 1800s. Like, we all have our parents were alive in the
Yeah,
60s. Like,
literally.
like, and that's actually, it's funny to me because I think about like, I wonder what our grandfather would have said about like how we're operating things and how, like, Melissa, even me and you, like how we're doing things and how we're running our households and like, like me being the professional that I am and everything. Like, I'm always like, gosh, I wonder if grandpa was still alive, if he would be like, oh my God, what are you doing? Get back in that kitchen.
But our
We're,
grandmother, it's so funny because our grandmother couldn't, and we joke, but I think every time either of us talks to our grandmother, she's just so overcome with pride and just the
yeah,
fact that we both have families. We're both, she was one of my biggest supporters for getting my PhD. Like she's just like, yes, go do these things because I didn't
yeah,
have the opportunity to go do these things. And I think she loves that we're both, yeah, we can both have career goals and objectives and also we're both having families.
yeah,
So we can, we can have both. You're just exhausted, but you can have
yeah.
both.
You can have both. I mean, and not for nothing, I was giving this some thought, and this sounds a little like it's kind of like a downer, but like eventually the whole like idea of women not being able to do certain things and the whole pay gap and all that stuff, eventually it is going to, not maybe not in our lifetime, maybe for our kids or our grandkids,
Hopefully.
but eventually it is going, we are going to see a shift in the other direction, and not because policy is changing in the moment, but because people are going to be dying. That sounds so horrible,
Yeah.
and I'm really sorry to say it that way. But the only reason why things probably will even out more or like get, even kind of improved is because like the people, hold on one second, honey, the people who were
That
brought
grew
up
up
during
with
this
that were
period,
ingrained in that
yeah,
culture
they're
will be
they're
dying
basically
off.
gonna be
Yeah.
dying. And then, yes, granted they did teach their ways to other people, but then you're gonna have other people growing up in a time where they're like, no, like this needs to be evened out.
Yeah. And I think that's why, coming back to this interview, one of the reasons that we brought this up in the first place is because to bring into conversation that these are not just depictions, these are not just images, like you said, it's like that either bitch on wheels sort of image versus the sweet people pleaser. There's a reason that those are in place. It's not just, oh, they make funny memes or they make, it's just in
Right.
conversation. No, that these were used
Yeah.
in decisions like that to make real decisions about who is in control and who has power in society. So yes, we want to bring it up because yeah, no, it's nice to talk about, it's nice to like tap into things that are blowing up on social media, and it's nice to tap into popular culture, like talk about Grey's Anatomy and these different movies that we brought up. But again, sort of bringing it around full circle, there were reasons why these depictions were put in place to begin with, and why
Yeah.
they continue in popular media till today.
Yeah. Exactly. It's not, yeah, exactly. And I'm glad you brought like that whole picture full circle, because there's a reason why. There's a reason why all this has like kind of come up this way. And it's because it's just like in the 60s and 70s, like we had to fight just for basic stuff.
Yeah.
So this is like, it's there for a reason.
Right. It served a purpose, and it made it harder for women to gain rights that we should have been entitled to for a long time. We're talking the 70s. We weren't allowed to have a bank account like that. You texted me that last week, and I'm still mind blown.
Oh yeah, no,
by
I was like going crazy texting Melissa when I was digging up all this stuff, 'cause I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like, and it's good to know it too. Like I honestly have never really dug into it too deeply. I've done it a little bit just because I wanted to self-educate. But and even like honestly, the women's suffrage movement, it's interesting because when you talk about like the different depictions of women in media, the women's suffrage movement, they were labeled as troublemakers.
Oh yeah.
They were labeled as a problem. And what I'm about to say is like kind of like there's a reason, like, but not there's a reason, but this is another situation where media portrayed them as like a problem. They're troublemakers. And
they didn't support their families.
They didn't support their families. Yeah, they weren't like, they were problems. They were destroying the very fabric of society.
American
The reason
culture.
why I even think of it in that sense is because anytime my mom referenced it, she always referenced it as, the women's suffrage. You're with those women libs, aren't you? And I'm like, hell yeah, I'm with those friggin' women.
Damn straight.
What are you, nuts? Like, because, but that's like a good, almost like example as like, my mom grew up in a time where like, yeah, women were, if you were in that, you were labeled as a problem. You were labeled as somebody who was destroying the very fabric of our society.
Yeah.
And even to this day, this is what she believes in her head. Even though I've talked to her about it, said, Mom, no, like they gave us the right to have a bank account. Mom, I wouldn't even be able to own my house if that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Like, do you realize that? But it's so well ingrained in her. And this is somebody who doesn't even, she's a retiree at this point. Doesn't, she's not doing anything, but like, it's so well ingrained in her that like, she can't really wrap her head around the fact that it was actually a good thing, like,
right.
And that whole like, you're a feminist. Like, you don't have to say it like that though. Like, yeah, sure I am. But like, it doesn't mean I'm not like for my family or for my husband or like, I'm not like a, bitch on wheels. Like, it's just, but again, like that's the whole portrayal. Like, really think about like how media takes these images and they feed it out to us
in very particular ways.
And then you don't realize it almost. And you kind of just are like, oh, okay, this is what it is, I guess. And you just go with it. And even myself, like I'm guilty of this too. You accept what media is putting out there because you don't realize like that it's not always 100% correct. I think now we know a little bit more so, but before we didn't. And I think before we trusted a lot more of like what was being put out there. And, it's really not something that you're supposed to be, you need to be doing. You need to do your own research.
And this is so, talking about this on our podcast, it seems so small in comparison to the history line. But at the same time, it's like, well, women, especially women, we're not having these conversations in public forums in this manner ever before. So the fact that and the more I think, again, we're just a small cog in the big picture, but the more women are able to have these conversations, the more that we do become aware of what purpose these sort of these popular media depictions had and continue to have, the more we'll be in a place to sort of start and continue to make those changes down the line.
Yeah. Exactly. And honestly, I think that's like the major key takeaway here is that like there was girls, please. I'm sorry. My twins are we do meditation now in the morning and it's time to go to the meditation
well, you're
spot.
Scheduled. You're not
my schedule guys. Like we do meditation. So I again from my virtual courses, part of the homework is to do daily meditations 2 times a day. And so I take my kids with me. So one at a time, my kids are coming with me to do these daily meditations down at the beach. Yeah.
We're definitely, this is just this. We're going to take this as a sign and we're going to have an episode on this because
I know. I have to talk about
pushing itself into
it is. I can't help it's something honestly, like for everyone listening, like this is like big, like this is a huge thing. And I think everybody should be participating in these courses with Kathy because it's
so stay tuned, people. We will
stay tuned for that. But yeah, like I think the key takeaway here is like, what, backing up what Melissa said, but also saying like, definitely do some self-research on this kind of thing. educate yourself, especially if you have daughters. Like, you want to be able to speak to this with them and let them know, like, where you think, you know, why things are a certain way, and be able to tell them, like, look, like, just because this appears this way doesn't mean it actually is. And let me educate you on how long ago, like, it wasn't that far ago that we didn't have, you know, basic things. And now we're still fighting for basic things. So the idea is really here, like, you don't want to forget the history. You want to be aware of the history so that we can be, like, aware of potential, like, problems or whatever. Like, just be aware. You want to be educated on this stuff because it's crucial to just know it and understand it so that you can prepare yourself, prepare your daughters, and make sure that you know what has happened so that in the future, you know, like, okay, I want to make sure that we don't go down that path again.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, exactly. Couple housekeeping things for the podcast. Melissa, I don't know, should we give them the big launch news?
Oh, yes. We are so excited on this. We have our website is now live. Woohoo!
So
And quite
been in the
polished looking, if
making.
I don't add. Like we did.
Yeah, I mean
We were
that
polished
was pretty polished. Yeah,
on
it's
that.
pretty polished. So we have our website launching. We're going to we'll post it in the description, and when we post about this particular episode, like, we'll put some pizzazz on it on Instagram and our social channel. But yeah, we're pretty excited. You can find us now on Instagram at Steel Roses Podcast. You can email us at steelrosespodcast@gmail.com, or you could find us on our website at steelroseswomen.com, and it's women, WOMEN. So steelroseswomen.com for our podcast website. Bit of information about me and Melissa, and, you know, a sneak preview into the membership that we're going to be launching in the next few months. So
Super
you know, stay tuned
exciting.
for that. Yeah, it'll be really cool.
Got a lot of good things coming. But yes,
Yeah.
please go check out that website. We spent some time on it, so at least go bring in some traffic that way. But we're really excited our goal is to continue to add to that, to add to the website so that we will have, you know, blog posts. We'll be able to link some of the sources of our information that we're getting for each episode. So we're really excited to be able to bring you that content.
Yeah, very excited about it. We appreciate everyone who's been listening and hanging with us. We appreciate the feedback that we've been getting. It's very helpful to us to know, like, are we discussing topics relevant to you? What other topics do you want us to discuss? We do definitely want to hear from all of you on that. So, you know, please always feel free to drop us a line. We're open to all your feedback. And again, we appreciate you listening. So we'll stay tuned for next week. We'll see you next week on our next episode.
Yep. We'll see you then, guys. And we'll be on time. So
yes. Thanks all.
Bye.